the second in the fall semester of Big Data Hub's Cyber Infrastructure Working Group. That we have some folks here, and hopefully we can, get the, as you said, get the recordings out and get other folks to be able to consume this information when they're not sitting in a Zoom meeting, and so staring at a different little box on their computer. I think most everybody knows everybody. I'm Niall Gaffney. I'm Director for Data Computing at the Texas Advanced Computing Center. I've been chairing this for, it's almost going on 2 years at this point. Fun little group to get together with and have these discussions. So we normally just go through the working group business next, so that we can have the lightning talk, not talk over everything, because that's the fun part of the meeting. And so let's get through this part first, which has some good parts to it. I'm not saying it's bad, but everybody comes for the lightning talks because everybody has really, really cool information they bring in. So why don't we go ahead and just go around. I don't know if we have representation from all the hubs right now, but just.
We have at least 3. And
yeah, I think we have 3. Yeah. So why don't we start, well, I guess we could start in the, let's start in the West. Let's start on the left.
Do we have the West?
We do not have the West. We don't have the West. That's right. So Melissa's not here yet. So let's move to, we can go to the South next.
Great, thank you. I think Florence referenced the slide she's working on. We have a all hubs meeting with NSF on Monday, so people are kind of scrambling for that.
Yes.
Regarding, Niall knows this well, our seed fund for the South Hub, we had the meeting last, I guess 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to award 1 large and 2 mediums and 3 smalls. So there may be some press coming out about that. Mm-hmm. It is Friday afternoon, so those are the 2 things that jump to my mind as far as the what's new and exciting in the South. If I think of something else, I'll mention it as we start going around.
Well, I will add on the funding for the seed funds. It was a very educational experience going through those, and so I hope folks are sharing some of the lessons of all of that as we go forward, because I found there were some really, really great things that came out of that, and I hope we can help find others like that to really make the funding have the most impact that it can. All right, why don't we go to Midwest?
So yeah, I can start, Jim. I don't know if you have anything to add, but we also made some seed funding decisions recently, and so you'll see some announcements about that coming up soon. We decided on 8 projects to take forward, mostly small, but all community driven and very focused on our priority areas. So that's great news. We're looking forward to partnering with a lot of folks within the region on those projects over the next year or so. I was going to mention the COVID Information Commons webinar, which is coming up next week if Florence was not here, but I'll turn it over to her next to talk about that.
No, you can talk about it. It's nice how we all share. I like to listen to you.
I'll mention that it's next Friday, so the 16th, or I guess, is it 2 weeks? I'm losing track of time here.
It's 2 weeks from today, but this is like COVID time. It's like dog years. Nobody really knows when things are happening. So
172nd of April in my book.
I know, right?
So that's the 16th at 11 a.m. Central, 9 Pacific, and noon Eastern. It's our second round of these PI lightning talks from the NSF-funded COVID projects under the Rapid Awards, and so we've had a great response from the community on those projects and a really nice effort last time from the folks. Anything else, Florence, that you want to mention about that?
No, that's great. Are you have more stuff to talk about?
No, I am done with Midwest.
Okay.
I was going to ask if you've got a link for that, if we could get that in the agenda at least, so that we can hopefully spread that around and get people interested, because those should be some very interesting talks.
They're really good. Do you want to put it in, John, or do you want me to find it after I'm done?
I'll do it while you're talking.
You're so thoughtful. What a great team we are. So we share the COVID Info Commons. Not much money. We don't really get any money, but we share what we're doing with the researchers. So what's going on in the Northeast, all sorts of stuff. So you know about the COVID Info Commons. We've actually updated the website recently, and we can put a link in for that as well. It's covidinfocommons.net. And we've added a Meet the Researchers page, which is really fun. So there are the PI lightning talks we do. We've separated them into their separate 5 to 7 minute lightning talks. And so you can listen to what they do and see who they are and where they are. We've done interviews with some of the researchers, and that's posted as well. John's done some in the Midwest. We did a bunch in the Northeast. So we're trying to really humanize it to enable this, human collaboration, researcher collaboration, which is really fun. And we're planning monthly webinars because we asked for 2 PIs to speak in the launch meeting in July, and 42 offered, which totally shocked us. So we said, okay, congratulations, you're now a COVID Info Commons community. We're going to talk every month, whether we need it or not. So we have 8 PIs that talk each time, and they're already collaborating. It's really cool. And so, we have Meet the Researchers, and we have a bunch of 44 data sets from around the world, from 6 continents. People send us this stuff because they know we have this. And a bunch of funding opportunities and groups and organizations and all sorts of stuff. And we submitted a proposal to speak at the Code Data Go Fair conference, which is virtually in Paris. And so if it gets accepted, I'm going to bring, 8 or 9 researchers with me virtually, and we can all present. I'll present the commons. They can present their stuff. We'll see if it gets accepted. And we're going to be presenting at the ADSA Leadership Summit, the COVID Info Commons. And then we're having a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion BOF that we're leading on the Friday, October 16th, that I'm co-leading with Fred Hutchinson Research Center, which they call themselves Fred Hutch or the Coop. They have so many different cute little nicknames for themselves. And the Chan Zuckerberg Initiatives. That's really cool. We did our seed fund round. We had a round 1 and a round 2. People were worried. We wanted to get it off the ground because we didn't even do it last year. So we were like, oh my gosh, we have to hurry up and use $500,000 by May. So August 31st was the first round, and we had 28 proposals. And so we're just reaching out to the top 10 or 12 researchers that we've chosen. We have some we're bringing over to regular admission that we're going to be looking at with round 2. Round 2 just ended last night. We haven't told people how many it is, but it's a dozen. So altogether, it's about 40, which is really cool. And then we'll figure out those. And we say up to $25,000. So most of them are $24,997. So,
that's
so
we actually, I was going to comment, we actually had one come in our smalls that was $2,000 under the limit. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
And we funded
How
it
humble.
because it was a good proposal.
Isn't that great? And it's easy, right? So we're just starting the finance stuff. So if you can teach me anything on that and how that's going to happen, I'm afraid of the nightmare we're going to go through. I don't know how that really works yet. So how we do the sub.
Yeah, that was sort of the big deal that we were trying to avoid is sub fees and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think we should, as I said, we ought to, once we've gotten through this, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned about how to best make the money effective.
Yeah, and to make you feel better or worse, at the retreat on Monday with NSF, we actually had a seed fund learnings panel with the seed fund chairs that are going to be presenting. So I think it's supposed to be the start of what are we learning? What do we have to do? And it gets complicated on the finance side is my perception. I'm planning on bringing my swimmies for that. So that's just starting for us. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been super busy. And then we're looking at what's the future of the COVID Info Commons. And I just want to tell you guys what I'm thinking because it has a lot to do with this working group. So we want to make sure we enable more researcher collaboration. So we're going to go to NSF with a 1-pager. This is what we're thinking. So I don't know if they're going to like it or not, but right now it's the COVID Rapids. I think it should be all NSF awards related to COVID. I'd also like to play with, NIH and international. I mean, go for it. If it's a COVID Info Commons and it's an open portal, what the heck, right? So we're going to see what they say. But then I'm also wondering if we should try to create something like an LHCONE, but for COVID, but without the hierarchy. So the idea of creating a distributed ecosystem of cyber infrastructure and data sharing, so that when the researchers find each other, they can actually collaborate and work on some cyber infrastructure and have test beds together. So I found one of the PIs that presented in September, Dominique Duncan. I don't know if y'all know her. She's at USC. Anybody know her? She's really good, really smart. Of course they all are. But she actually has this ARC thing where it's COVID related NIH and SF projects, 8 of them maybe. And they can either do the compute for their testing if they find a data set on the USC infrastructure or their own. They have this interesting thing going on. So I'm wondering if we want to think about like an integrated a connected distributed cyber infrastructure of compute, storage, and networking to support the COVID researchers. So just tell me if you think I'm crazy or if it's something you'd like to think about with me.
The answer may be yes and yes.
Okay.
No, and that's why I think I like it. Is I think
Okay.
that's, in fact, it might be a good thing to have as soon as we could. I don't want to bump anybody from talks coming up, but it might be good to bring folks in and see if we can, put together some pieces on this and see what we can do. Because I mean, we're doing we've got, all sorts of COVID running on Frontera and everything else, but it'd be nice to be able to disseminate some of that. The thing standing up at the back of my neck right now is if there's any security concerns around any of the data that we would need to deal with.
And we could specify
as far as if there's any HIPAA or if it's health data, and you have to then consider the state and phase of the moon in some places. I think it's
and it could be stage 1 is open data only.
Okay.
Right, which I think is the right way
absolutely.
to start. And I know John had already reached out about NCSA and some stuff they have that would be, HIPAA, FISMA, this, that. And I'm like, no, okay, that could be yours, but maybe we can connect you to people, So we'd have to look at those things. And I think it would be maybe a step function we could consider, but I'm thinking open first.
Yeah, open, and then perhaps providing open query, if you will. I know there are ways to do that, and Jim can probably tell us a lot about some of those as well, sort of the anonymization of query where you don't actually control your compute.
And actually we have a researcher at the Data Science Institute at Columbia, because I work there now. I have to keep getting used to this. And he's helping us think through what type of search research could we do, where we could actually have data sets find data sets and researcher, PIs find PI, where you can actually use contextual data to find other data that can help you with your challenge. So he already has some ideas on that. So if we want to schedule a talk about this, a discussion, not a talk, not presentation.
No.
We'd invite him too. His name is Chris Day.
I think, well, I would encourage that to happen, and it doesn't even have to happen on this channel. I would love to. I
agree. Okay, great. Thanks, Niall.
So it's something we can do as an offshoot from this, and not do it as a formal meeting, but more as let's see what we can do. From my background, it's an old Russian folktale, the stone soup ideal, where everybody brings a little bit, and we can actually make this happen, and then maybe go get some money to make it happen for real.
Well, actually, NSF has asked us for our proposal for the next version of the COVID Info Commons. So that's what this is about.
Perfect.
That's exactly what it is. And actually, I'm going to have a first discussion with Jim Hendler, who is on our steering committee, who you probably all know, but he's at RPI and he was involved with the HPC COVID consortium, which is interesting, but that's very formal. He's like, for them to have a formal relationship, OSTP has to sign off. I'm like, no, this is like, we'll just point to them then, don't get excited, but, and then John Goodhue is going to be on that call, and me and Jeanette, just to start thinking about it. But we can have another call. Anyone else want to be in on I'm calling it KICSI right now. Isn't that cute? It's the COVID Info Commons Cyber Infrastructure.
Well, if you don't mind, we have some folks I might share it with here.
Sure.
Because there are efforts all around.
And it's just an idea. Make sure you don't say Florence is doing this. This is like, we were discussing this theoretical hypothesis regarding potential discovery of A, right. And then, just make sure it's very mushy.
Oh, absolutely. But I think, you get the right people together around that sort of thing, and good things can happen.
I think it would be so cool. I really do. So thank you very much for your patience as always. I tried to talk fast, but a lot of words, sorry.
You do a very good job of that.
So I saw that Jim put a couple of links into the chat here, so I want to go back. I didn't give him a chance to talk about Midwest stuff. So Jim, did you have something to add about those two links?
Just a follow-up. Thanks, John. We did host a an agricultural sort of event, focused event on data ownership. And the recordings for that will be available on the link that I provided. And then just in terms of sort of nationally, and in the spirit of promoting awareness of all things data, APLU and AAU, many of your organizations are a member of either of those two organizations, if not both, hosted their summit or a lead up to the summit just last week as well. I'm part of that steering committee, and we're working very diligently to release some recommendations that were vetted by the group of 33 organizations that were part of that meeting. And so, so just heads up on that. You can kind of keep your radar out for further announcements regarding both of those two themes.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. Moving forward, there's well, we've already reached out to you to get more information on how we can do these data systems and get the buy-in that isn't just compliance. That's, you know.
Yeah, I like how this is coming. It's really sort of focusing in on case studies, Niall. So good. You'll actually, to me, those are the most useful when you can sort of see, well, how did people do it? Yeah. Or at what stage are they at right now? And so that's really been the focus.
No, that's great stuff. Glad to hear it. All right, well, I guess Melissa didn't make it today, so we're not going to hear, unless anybody else has any updates that they've heard, grapevine or otherwise, about the OSN. I know it's coming along, and you know, I have a feeling they're at that phase. There's always the phase where you talk about what you're going to do, and then there's the great panic, and then you talk about what you actually got done. And I think they're in that middle phase still right now. The hardware is all coming together and the systems are working, so it's all good. So anyhow, that I think takes us through the business section here. Sorry, we were going to talk a little bit about any sort of updates on outreach and engagement. Anything that we need to do or should be doing around that to maybe grow this group a little bit or reach out to other communities. And I think, you know, I think we talked a little bit about it this spring and wound up on the agenda here. And I think, you know, the fact that it is only 11 of us as opposed to usual 20 some odd, I don't think that means that people aren't making it, but there may be better ways or other ways for us to get word out and get other people interested in this. So I'm a terrible PR person and I don't tweet. So, you know, I don't know what else we can do.
No, that's okay. I think what we probably want to think about, but I want to get to Jim's presentation.
Yeah.
We could take this in another time, is what we focus on, because it's very general, right? Cyber infrastructure and data sharing. So you have to kind of, you know, tune in and see what's really going on. It's not like, you know, you're looking at Law and Order SVU, you know, it could be, you know, romper room, you know, it's like, it could be, not that we're romper room, but, you know, it could be anything. So it could be, as we progress, maybe there's some themes, you know, like we make it, you know, that we have, I don't know. But like maybe if this COVID info commons ones come, or health becomes a big issue, maybe if we had, I think, something more domain specific, because that's one of the things I've been thinking about the hubs for years, is as compared to just the big, let's generally talk about data. I mean, data is what we've used as scientists forever. That's what scientists do. You did a lab experiment when you were in high school. It was data, you know, it was all data. So what is it that really is unique that could be really valuable as people move things forward? And so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's one of the things I've felt for years. And now that we have the COVID info commons, we get to start doing some of that, which is kind of cool. And like the ag stuff that Jim was talking about, you know, let's make this specific. So that's just a thought, as we may want to think about, like in the new year, you know, what type of focus we want. Shannon?
Yeah, just to build on that, I think a best practice from another working group that I'm involved in is, you know, every 6 months they set a theme and a goal, what they want to try to do with these meetings for the next 6 months. It doesn't mean, you know, if that goal or theme doesn't fit with your research, you're going to tune them out forever. You just realize for the next 6 months, I'm probably not going to make it a priority to attend, but it happens to be a theme I like. And then the group picks the theme. And so that, to build on what Florence said, I think that's a good way to maybe create some more energy.
Just consider it, you know?
Yeah, no, I can see what you're saying, you know, and actually having, you know, more of a, you know, I've really enjoyed hearing all of the different things. There's always a downside to every selection, but you know, it's been nice to have such a variety of things, but it may be good to be a bit more thematic on sort of the semester level. You know, it's only 4 months, so.
And then it might be more of a value proposition for people to present, because
Right.
if they know they'll be with like-minded people and they can collaborate, that's I think one of the values of the COVID Info Commons. They know that they're all working on this problem from many different facets, but they know they're all working on it. And that could actually be an attraction, maybe. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think maybe we should discuss that and
Yeah.
come up with something on, you know, I've got a few ideas, but
Goody.
you know, maybe at the next meeting that should be our part of our working group first setup is, you know, let's start looking at a theme, whether it's, you know, how to do you know, reproducibility, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever we can do, and you know, I keep, you know, how to do better than just writing a Jupyter notebook for a semester.
Even though we love Jupyter notebooks.
We love them, but
we love them.
We can do better. So nothing wrong with them. All right, so with that, unless there's any other business that people want to bring up, why don't we move on to Jim? So I think everybody knows Jim. He's at NCSA, where he leads up the cybersecurity division there, and he's going to give us the results of the Trustworthy Data Working Group survey. And so without further ado, why don't I turn things over and we can find out if screen sharing is working.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much. It's great to be with you today. Let's see, I'm going to put a link to the presentation in the chat, and then I will share my screen. Okay, hopefully you see my slides.
Yes, we do.
Good. Okay, so what I'll be talking about is guidance and survey results from the TDWG, the Trustworthy Data Working Group, which is a nice collaborative effort that has really good participation from the BD hubs. And so here's a list of my co-authors on on the guidance report that we published on Wednesday. And so you'll see Florence there, and John is there, and other names that you'll recognize. So really great to have an active working group working on these topics, and especially focused on trustworthy data. So what's new? Melissa and I presented to this group back in March, and we talked about the survey that we were preparing. And so since then, we published the survey, and we received 111 survey responses. And so we published a report analyzing those survey responses. And then in the last 3 months, we've been looking at that survey analysis and other sources of recommendations and guidance to bring together a report that gives some guidance on trustworthy data management in science projects. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the survey analysis, a little bit about the guidance, and hope to interest you in digging into the details in the report. So in developing the survey, we wanted to understand existing guidance and discussions of trustworthiness in the literature. And so we did not find a single definition of trustworthiness. And so one theme working through our working group, and you'll see in my presentation also, is how do we get at the attributes of trustworthiness? But certainly data integrity is a core attribute of trustworthiness. And so that's attribute that NIST 1825 and NIST 1826 focus on, and so we see also in other references. So we know that integrity is a key part of trustworthiness. And we also looked at some big failures of trustworthiness in the community. There's an example of a script that was used in nuclear magnetic resonance research that impacted a lot of results. Also, the integrity checking in the Pegasus scientific workflow integrity tool detected multiple errors in jobs run in the Open Science Grid. So those were two really interesting trustworthiness failure cases for us to look at in the working group. So based on that background, we developed a survey with 4 sections. One is demographics about the respondents, information about their views on trustworthiness and the data that they work with, any tools and technologies that they work with to keep their data trustworthy, and we had a few wrap-up questions. So it was a total of 16 questions, 7 multiple choice, 5 Likert scale, and 4 free-form responses. So the Likert scale went from strongly disagree to strongly agree, like we have in this example here. And so thanks to promotion, spreading the word that the BD Hubs did and others did, I was really pleased that we got 111 responses to our survey from April 21st to May 31st. And so here's one of the questions. So this question, we got a response from N equals 110. And so only one person didn't respond to this specific question when they filled out the survey. And it tells us a bit about who responded to the survey. And you see here, 54% were research computing facilitators, 46% infrastructure providers, operators. So you see, this is the community that many of us work with, so it's no surprise that, so we got good responses from those communities. And so these are people that are supporting a lot of different areas of science, but also people who see themselves as scientific data users, data creators, cybersecurity analysts, compliance officers, and others. And so when we look at the fields of science that are supported, because we had responses by a lot of IT people, we see computer and information sciences being at the top of the list, but also many other areas of sciences are being supported either directly by the researchers or because of the facilitators and the work that the facilitators do and the infrastructure operators do. And so to get at this idea of what does it mean for scientific data to be trustworthy, we assembled our first set of attributes about trustworthy data based on the literature. We looked at accuracy, integrity, methodology, provenance, reproducibility, reputation, responsible stewardship, and significance. And we gave these questions that are shown on the slide and asked the survey takers which of these attributes made sense to them as being part of trustworthy data for them. And so integrity and reproducibility got the most checks from our respondents, but also a good agreement with provenance, methodology, and responsible stewardship. Interesting that not a lot of people selected significance. And in terms of, I'll come back to some of the other responses that we got that gave us some input into our guidance report. We also got a very good response that most of the respondents agreed that protecting the trustworthiness of scientific data is important. 73% strongly agreeing, 17% agreeing. And so that gives us good motivation for continuing our look into this topic. And we asked if you received additional guidance, would that be helpful? Would you apply additional guidance if you received it? And so 93% said yes or maybe. And so that was good motivation for us to work on the guidance report. And so quick overview of the guidance that we've written up and published this week. We distilled from the survey responses 4 categories of stakeholders for guidance: data users, data providers, secure infrastructure providers, and facilitation and compliance professionals. And so you see the facilitators went into the facilitation category, infrastructure providers have their own category, but also data users, data providers. And of course, many people in the community have multiple roles. And so the guidance for these different stakeholders can speak to people in their different roles in the community. And so in the guidance report, we thought more about the attributes of trustworthiness. And so one of some of the write-in responses we received was about confidentiality and data encryption. So we did add confidentiality to our list of attributes. Also, I noted that significance wasn't selected by a lot of our respondents. So we dropped significance, but we brought in authorization and authenticity. And also did some rewording on attributes like accepted techniques of creation. We also looked at the trust principles for data repositories: transparency, responsibility, user focus, sustainability, and technology. Transparency was another one of our write-in attributes that we had in the survey. So that's another important one for us. And we thought about how those attributes compare to the FAIR attributes that we all know and love. So really interested in this group's input on these different attributes of trustworthiness. And so that could definitely be a topic of discussion for us today and in the future. And so what we did in the report is for the 4 categories of stakeholders and each attribute, we gave some guidance for each of these attributes and talked about what are the needs for each of those stakeholders. And so the data user, just looking at integrity, needs to understand that the data that user is using is not corrupt, it's free from errors. The data provider wants to know that the integrity of data they're being provided is maintained. Infrastructure provider needs to provide tools so that the users of that infrastructure can maintain the integrity of their data. And facilitators need to help data users and data providers with those services and tools so they can assess and ensure the integrity and accuracy of their data. So there's lots more rows in this table in the report, but in the interest of time, this is the only row I'm going to show today. We have another table in the report looking at tools and technologies and how they help with different attributes of trustworthy data. And one thing that we found in this analysis is that some of these attributes are much better supported by the tools that we have at hand than other attributes. So we've got lots of help with data availability and integrity and managing authorization to our data. But looking at the techniques that were used to produce the data, the authenticity and metadata around the data, we don't have a lot of helpful tools there. So another area that we could really use some more input is tools to highlight that help with aspects of trustworthy data like that. And so I think I went even shorter than 15 minutes, so we'll have some time for discussion here. But the next steps are you can view our full report at both of those reports at our homepage, trustedci.org/trustworthydata. And if you're not already on our mailing list, you're welcome to join the mailing list and help us develop the next revision to our report on community guidance. And I'm also preparing a longer presentation about the survey results and the guidance for the Science Gateways webinar next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I'm happy for people to join that. And so our goal is to wrap up the working group at the end of the calendar year in December. And that will include a revision to our guidance report based on feedback that comes out of our discussion today, that comes out of the webinar next Wednesday, and other input that we receive between now and the end of the year. And of course, thanks very much to all the working group members who've participated in developing these reports, the 111 people who responded to our survey, and our sources of funding. And so without further ado, I'm happy to take comments and questions.
So Jim, could you go back to the page with that pretty new chart that you created?
Yeah,
that one. Yeah. I haven't seen it so well laid out before. Now, when you were presenting this, you were talking about the types of tools that you think would be valuable. Can you just spend a little more time on that?
Yep, this was the list of tools that that we listed in the survey.
Right.
And so let's see. So we've got third-party data repository, network and cloud storage, archival storage, integrity checking. So like for access controls, let's see, what's the best way to review them? So you see.
Well, actually, you're being very thoughtful. Thank you. But I thought I heard you say, if you know of tools that people could use, let us know. So are we looking to fill some of these? Do we know if there are gaps here that we're looking for?
Right.
Or what
so
do we look? That's what I was looking for, is how can we help?
Understanding the methodology and the techniques that were used to produce the data and publishing that in metadata about the data is, I think, one area where we don't have a lot of tools that we're referencing right now about, so that can be tools for like gathering the provenance of how the data is collected and produced. And so I think so far we don't have information about that provenance in the about available provenance tools in the reports.
Okay, so this relates to something I've been thinking, is that it could be interesting to have like a collaborative workshop in the new year as a result of this report and the input from the community, which is rather broad. We don't know all the humans, but you know, you had 111 people. Some of them are scientists, some of them might be other things, industry, government, whatever. But maybe identify a challenge or opportunity that the community has said they want help with. And maybe we could plan a workshop where we actually can find some potential solutions and have discussions to really understand the problem if we don't understand it well. So have like a combined kind of big data hubs and trusted CI kind of trustworthy data workshop or something, because I think we can do a better job of making sure that the data owners and data creators are really thinking about cybersecurity, because I think some of them take it for granted that it's someone else's problem or they don't have to worry about it. And I wouldn't say it to them that way, but I think it's a problem.
But it does remind me that it reminds me of one of the questions we did ask. So I've got some extra slides here. So
Yeah.
We did ask this question, and so we asked, you know, do your job responsibilities include establishing or maintaining the trustworthiness of scientific data? And that's where I was thinking we're going to have some people say it's somebody else's problem.
Right.
But so I was pleasantly surprised that we had 41% strongly agree, 28% agree, but that might be representative of how many facilitators and infrastructure providers we had responding to our survey.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of bias on that, but it's better than it's just those people thinking about it.
Yeah, and when they say they agree, but they don't strongly agree, it could be that they agree, but they're not the only ones that are responsible for it, right? And, you know, just looking at it, they may take some of it for granted. So I know that coming into the Northeast Big Data Hub, and John, I'd love to hear what you have to say about the Midwest. Maybe since Trusted CI is part of your family, it doesn't feel like an omission. But I know like the cybersecurity effort before I got here, it was hard to pull people together, you know, and even now, you know, we're going to host a connected healthcare cybersecurity workshop because I lead this IEEE working group in that area on clinical IoT. And we're going to talk about security, privacy, and ethics. So we're expanding it a little bit, not just security, but still I have a lot of IEEE people that want to be in it. And I have like a handful of people from the hub. So I feel like it's something that's not top of mind for the data folks. But John, I don't know what you think.
I think I agree, but I think it's due to the fact that a lot of our stakeholder community is really domain focused, and so you know someone working in ag or water quality is very focused on their scientific questions and not necessarily on the underlying cybersecurity issues, even though they should be in a lot of cases. And so we have had a cybersecurity working group for a couple of years that has very minimal work to date, given the lack of engagement that we've had. So that's really been a priority for me for this upcoming year to get that relaunched and get folks more engaged in thinking across some of those disciplinary boundaries about the questions that everybody faces, particularly the issues that Jim talked about in this report. You know, what does it mean to have trustworthy data? How do I know that what I'm using for my research is actually data that I can rely on? So I definitely think that it's an issue that we should all be pushing harder on.
Yeah, so based on that, I'm glad to hear that. Not that it's a happy answer, but I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one. You know, so maybe we could think about, you know, you wanted to get it kickstarted in the new year, John. I would like to increase focus on it. You know, maybe we could think about some type of co-sponsored workshop, Jim. You know, and you have at least me and John, you know, maybe Shannon says, yay, verily, you know, the people in the West, you know, but once we get it started, we just invite the family. That's how we work as the hubs now. You know, but maybe we could think about what would that look like? you know, and how do you leverage this great data that you pulled together, very clearly represented, thank you for making it so clear for people, to get underneath this and help people, because a lot of people said, yeah, hey, you have something that could help me, that would be great. And so I think it's a chance to increase awareness for domain scientists and data scientists, and then work on it. And I think it's going to be a journey. I don't think they're all going to say, oh my gosh, yeah, I've been hoping I could worry about one more thing, you know, but I think starting that awareness journey would be really a very adult supervision thing for us to do.
I think that that workshop idea sounds great. And so, and there's that aspect of matchmaking where you're sharing, here's the good practice that I'm following, or here's a new solution that I've developed, and I'd like others, or it's available for others to adopt to improve the trustworthiness of their data. That I think that would be excellent to have a workshop to facilitate that that information sharing.
Yeah, and John and I would like to work with you, I think John said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's interest from the other hubs as well. I won't speak for Shannon, but I know in the South that they've had a different sort of flavor of cybersecurity, more focused on the social infrastructure side of things. And that's definitely an interest for us as well. So I think, you know, the fact that we have a strong materials and manufacturing focus, which has some industry concerns about cybersecurity and data sharing, and other areas as well, that there's some good overlap amongst all the hubs.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, I'm not trying to build it now, the workshop, but based on what you just said, John, maybe we could have breakouts by domain, a couple of breakouts by domain area. You know, maybe there could be domain area breakouts, and there could be you know, technical breakouts that focus on a certain way of doing cybersecurity, or a cybersecurity tool or something like that. You know, maybe we could get the domain data and data scientists and cyber infrastructure people together. Maybe it's just an idea. I don't know what the right answer is going to be, but I think it would be interesting for us to think about. And then we co-brand it, and we don't have to spend any money. We just have to use Zoom. It's a beautiful thing these days, right? But I do have a cybersecurity workshop grant award that I have to use up by the end of February. And so I've been thinking about if we, oh, look at you, look at you. You have to watch what I say, and you're recording this. So you have to cut all this stuff out. But, you know, maybe, you know, we can get students involved and, you know, pay a little time for them or something. You know, I think it has to be humans that we, my new shtick is dollars to humans. That's like my strategy now, because they can't travel. So maybe, you know, we could do something interesting together.
So is the next step the ED meeting agenda item, or what do you think?
I think we can figure it out and bring it to them, a proposal of what we're thinking. Yeah, and you know, definitely, you know, share it with your, you know, ED friends. This isn't a secret, and see what they think. But since John and I tend to have passion around it, we're happy to co-lead the thinking, I think. But all ideas welcome.
So, being an astronomer, we always overanalyze all of our data. Just warning you, that's what we do. If you're an ultraviolet astronomer, it's okay. If you're an X-ray astronomer, you get 2 photons, and that's a statistically significant event to sort of publish a paper on. So yeah, statistics get thrown out the window on these 110. But I found it interesting, and I think this may be part of the selection effect of this, that if you looked at on slide 7, where you're breaking down the respondees classification of what they do, you sort of see, I would say, a reflection of people who are sort of, I'll say, aware of cybersecurity. And so the interesting thing to do here, because astronomers aren't interested in cybersecurity. I mean, the data is worthless, which is why it's so great to work with. There's no economic value to it. So I was just curious if there was any differences that you noticed where above this line, particular categories of things were more important and below that it wasn't. And I'm going to say the reason I'm thinking about this is because down at the bottom are a lot of sort of the areas that we're working on campus to put together, you know, ways to have, you know, better data storage and sharing of publication and all those things with the libraries. And there's a very clear difference between how people work with data in what we're calling science and engineering versus the rest of the people on campus who work in data. And I'm just wondering if you saw much of that here, and whether there are ways to educate and help make tools that work the way that people do and still do best practices around that. And I just didn't know if you had some of that information from the survey.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because we looked for it. I mean, part of the reason why we asked this question is we were expecting some correlation. You know, for some area of science, maybe they were going to say, you know, we don't feel responsible for trustworthy data. And so we did a lot of cross correlations analysis between the different answers, and we didn't find any significant correlations between areas of science and differences in the responses to the other questions. So that was, I think that's the sort of thing that we could always keep looking for in the data. But at least so far, the search that we looked for, we weren't able to detect it.
So I find that a little scary. What do you think, Niall?
Well, it's 110, as I said. You know, that other category is 7 people. That's, you know, 7 people who are interested enough to respond to this. There's another bias, but it's something that I'm trying to look at while we're designing a lot of these things, and making sure when we're building up the people who are not only responding to these but who are attending workshops, make sure that we encourage folks who aren't necessarily on this chart to help, because I'd love to have, you know, the folks who are doing, you know, the social science and history and other pieces, which have exactly the same cybersecurity issues and trustworthy issues and other things, but the way that their communities go about those are very different than they are in physics, where, you know, if the checksum's right and it all came from the right place, it's good data, you know.
Right. So, you know, you bring up some very interesting points. I actually find it a little scary, because some people should be really worried, like health and medical sciences, right? They should be super worried. And to say that we really can't tell the difference between them and social behavioral scientists and physicists actually scares me a little bit, because I think some people should be hyper aware, right? And really worried. But maybe that brings up the point that there are maybe two facets, and there can always be more, but maybe 2 facets we look at. One is securing your data so nobody tries to steal it. You don't end up in a ransomware situation, which is health and medical sciences, right? And the other is people trying to change your data. Now that's becoming more and more important in climate science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can become more and more important almost everywhere. And it could be availability of your data too, that you can't do your work, right? So maybe what we could think about is how we would talk to these different humans that would be valuable for them. Like, do you care about people stealing your data? Not really, they can have it. I have a backup copy. They're not going to do ransomware for my, like, you know, whatever data. Do you care about them changing it? Now, wait a second. I really care about them changing it. Every scientist should worry about that, right? The provenance. Do you need security for that? Yeah, you do.
But then there are people for whom, you know, though they have a data set, that is their career, right? And that's all of these questions become very different then. And how do I share that so that people can be confident in my results without giving away my life's work? And those are also issues that need to be addressed in all of these systems.
Absolutely.
And they need to be done in ways that a non-technical person feels the trust that they feel when they have it on a zip drive or whatever they have in their office that nobody else in the world can read, right? You know, and so that I was sort of interested to see if anything in the lower part there did come out. It's interesting that it didn't.
You know, so maybe one thing we think about if we're going to have this workshop, we think of what would be valuable. Maybe, you know, we talk with other people who do have the data. It's their data. And some of us are them, or we have friends or both, and see what would be interesting to them. Maybe talk to some of, you know, the research computing leaders that we know that are dealing with this type of stuff. You know, do they think that a cybersecurity workshop would be valuable for domain scientists? Is it for research computing facilitators? Is that where we should start? You know, because they're the kind of like in the middle. They touch the data and they touch the infrastructure, you know, they touch both. So maybe we, you know, we think about this workshop idea, we gather more input through our friends and family and networks of humans. And then when we talk about it again, like in a month or two or whatever, we have some more insight on what might make sense for the community.
We might organize the agenda of the workshop by different themes. So have a few hours on social and behavioral sciences, a few hours on health and medical sciences, with the recognition that we would have different speakers and get different input about different data, trustworthy data concerns from those different communities.
That would be dynamite. And maybe get that NIAID guy everyone loves that does IAM. I forget his name, but everyone knows him. You know, to talk in the health and medical sciences one. And then if we announce that and say, these are the 2 topics, and people come to us and say, wait a second, what about geosciences? You know, then we'll identify more demand. And, you know, then we can kind of, you know, do it step by step. Because I think part of it is increasing their awareness of what the challenges really are, and that they can either do something about it or make sure somebody else is doing something about it. Sometimes just have to educate them enough to say, ask for this, you know.
Because in some cases it's fairly low-hanging fruit to just enable the data integrity flag on the tool you're using. So it's not necessarily onerous to improve, to have some real improvement in the trustworthy management of the scientific data.
And how valuable would that be? People come to this webinar, they find out that they just have to do this and this, and they're more protected. Whoa. Right? If I get one thing out of a webinar, it's a big day. That's how I look at it. So I don't feel bummed after I go to one, you know, but that would be very valuable. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I would encourage talking to the people that we know, but I think there's the whole of people who we don't. We need to make sure we flatten this curve.
Yeah, how do we
to steal from the parlance of our time?
Well, I think
because we definitely need more people, and in fact there are a few other tracks that would be really good to have filled in here as well.
Yeah. So, well, we would talk to people we know because they're accessible and they might answer to people who we don't know. But we would invite it. I think we should invite broadly. You know, we use the big data hubs as a channel, and Trusted CI as a channel, and TAC as a channel.
Well, but even going outside of that, I think, you know, you're going to say cybersecurity, and a lot of people use the same password everywhere. So, and they think that's good enough. It's not their problem. And so what we need somehow is to fill in those folks here, because they need to be part of the solution, to understand what it is to check the box saying this is trustworthy data, or to, you know, it isn't, I just found it on a USB stick I picked up in the seat back cushion on the one flight I took. Or something, you know, I mean.
With all the stories of the CIA or something throwing like flash drives into parking lots to see who would pick them up, and people still do that? Are you kidding?
People do that, yes, exactly. So.
God, really? We really have to show that advertisement. But you're right, we'd want to go broad. And this could even, if we could do it at PERC too, or we do it at SC, or, you know, like we could go broader and broader.
And, well, and maybe even some focused on some topical meetings that aren't the you know, the standard set, or our standard set.
Yeah.
Of course, that's more hours in the day and more Zoom meetings, but you know.
Yeah, we could think about that. Let's see what it is that we come up with.
No, that all sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, so we should have that on our agenda again. And Jim, if you and, you know, the Trusted CI or whatever, I mean, I kind of I play with everybody, but I'm not at Trusted CI anymore, but we all work together. If, you know, you have thoughts too, we could schedule another call or a separate call, or just do it on another one of these calls, whatever you all think.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Why don't we go ahead and put that for next time? We can do a follow-up here as part of the business when we start. You know, I think there's room in that area for cleaning up. Excellent. Well, we have less than a minute here before we all scurry off to our last Zoom meeting of the day. If you're on the East Coast, if you're Central, you got 2 more.
Boy, am I ready. What a week. Jeez. Louise.
But I want to thank everybody. I think this was a really productive meeting. Good discussions all around, and hopefully, and some good ideas. I've even jotted down some ideas here for possible themes, and so hopefully next time we can talk to some of those and start pulling all of this together. And so with that, I will bid everybody a happy Friday and a good weekend, and happy October.